Welcome, Nick. And as you may notice, according to your program, we were supposed to be joined by Rick Lowe, artist and founder of Project Row Houses, and unfortunately, he was unable to attend. But fortunately, Nick, that means we have a lot more time to talk.
That's great.
So I think your personal history is just fascinating. You're a prolific author. You're founder of the oldest Hispanic publishing house in the United States. And really, you have taken on this personal mission of preserving Hispanic literature and culture in the United States. Talk to me how all this started for you.
Well, if we think about the importance of art in the community, our effort came out of the civil rights movement in the 1960s and 1970s. Now, I don't want the young people's eyes to glaze over when we talk about the 60s and 70s, but actually, art was at the service of defining community and helping the community to move forward and find its identity. And that's what happened in the 1960s and 70s in the Latino civil rights movement. And we started publishing magazines and doing street theater, and there were mural artists and everything. It was a flourishing of the arts. And that very much moved us forward, pushed us into publishing books. So by the late 1970s, we founded Arte Publico Press, and we called it Arte Publico, public art, because we wanted to derive the culture from the community and return it to the community. We wanted to be reflective and serve the needs of that community.
Now, give us an idea how walled off the publishing world was then and to a certain extent still is to Latinos.
Well, my generation never found ourselves in books that we read in school or on the shelves of the library, even though there was a very rich historical culture of writing, publishing, of art, etc., but it just was not accessible. So part of our mission is going back and finding all of that and making it accessible. But
where do you find it?
Well, you find it in old archives, you find it in old newspapers. There were something like 2,000 Spanish language newspapers published in the United States from the 19th to the 1960s. People didn't know about them, didn't have access, and that was the primary place where art and literature was published.
Where your stories were told and preserved, right?
Yeah, so we started Arte Publico Press not only to publish contemporary voices that came out of the community, emerged from the community, when the publishing world was very much closed off to us. It still is kind of closed off to us. There are some headliners, many of whom actually we launched.
Okay.
Through
such as who? Name some names.
Oh, Sandra Cisneros,
okay.
Gary Soto, Victor Villaseñor, bestsellers. Right. You know, they always get the headlines, but we have lots of other people that come up from the grassroots, even develop out of creative writing programs at universities that still confront the barriers in publishing, getting into New York or getting into the movies or getting into television.
How frustrating is that in our country today, which, as we look a few decades down the road, we are going to become a majority country of color, people of color?
Well, it's really critical when a large portion of the population is not reflected in the media. Mm-hmm. And for us, the primary media, the mother of the media is the printed word. And it is so flexible, it goes on the computer, it goes on to all types of screens. And we're very much interested in going beyond what's on the page to all the different forms where people get information or art and culture. And one of the places that we find that is especially critical to us is children's books. Less than 5% of children's books published in the United States are written by minorities. And half of those are written from people outside of the culture. It's a truly dangerous situation when we're talking about literacy. We do work with the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation and many others. But it's critical when kids go preschool, kindergarten, third grade, and they never get to see themselves in the pages of books. They can't identify with those books. If there's something that looks like their home, their family, the language that is spoken, if the books can be bridges from home to the school, it is so important to start that literacy journey through things that are recognizable.
Exactly. That ignites the passion to read if there's something in there that excites you. I mean, as Neil Bush was just saying, that's how you get children into reading.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we publish for all different audiences and all different ages, but we have a great emphasis in our children's book line, which is called Piñata Books, that we develop the books with professional authors and illustrators around the issues that are important to kids and their culture, things about bilingualism, things about immigration, things about family separations.
These are real issues.
Really, but you know, they're not thrown in the face of kids. They're just touchstones where people know their environment. They can see what is going on, and they get knowledge about that. So they feel at home. The characters in the books look like their families, like their neighborhood, so on and so forth. And it's so important. Part of that is we also have a dynamic program of touring national writers to the schools, community centers.
And that's what we see the image of right there. Is that a writer reading to children?
Absolutely, yes. So we bring them into Houston, and the kids love it. But more important about that is that we just don't read to kids, which reading is very important, and we teach parents how to read to kids. But we also work with kids so that they can develop their writing and reading skills, and they can control what is in their own little creative books. They can get the idea that they can write.
That's so exciting.
They can create books. They can do what these authors are doing and see, you know, the finished product of the authors. One day they may be able to do it. But behind that is our hope that they go and understand that they're manipulating their environment, that they can take elements and fashion them into art, history, literature, and this will be an important stepping stone in their whole education.
And you're also using books to help children improve their health. Talk to me about that. Work on exercise, diabetes, things
right.
like that.
Well, unfortunately, among Hispanic families, diabetes is rampant. And so we wanted to help to nip that in the bud. And so we created a program called Salud Familia, where we engage some of the leading nutritionists and dietitians and health experts from around the country to vet the writing of some of our professional writers on specific how to eat, you know, how to plan the kinds of things to eat and the kinds of exercise to do in very, very entertaining books for kids that we were able to give out through community centers and community health centers. Hundreds of thousands of these books we gave out around the country and in Houston, of course.
There was a study done recently, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It came out last year, and they looked at the impact of communities, and this was in New York City, where lower and middle income communities, where people had more ready access to cultural resources, and they found that the communities, the residents there, had better outcomes when it came to education, security, and health. I mean, we've always felt like the arts will improve a community, but this seems like some solid proof.
Oh, we firmly believe in that. And when art comes out of the community and is integrated in the community and celebrated and actually reflects, helps the community understand the vectors of power and economics that they deal with on a daily basis, they can understand better how to move, how to create, how to identify, how to make change in their own communities.
You know, before we go to the audience for questions, I did want to ask you, then does that make it even more frustrating that, for instance, here in the Houston area, where you have a Hispanic population of more than 40%, when it comes to funding from foundations, from the state or the federal government for the arts, less than 1% of that goes to Latino organizations, artists, writers?
Oh, tell me about it.
How do you address that?
It's absolutely true. I use the word sequestered, that the foundations, the government, and corporate funding, the giant share of it goes into providing entertainment for the executive class at some of our largest institutions, while starving the grassroots and starving the ethnic and cultural arts groups that are in the community. Less than 1%, that's dastardly. you know? So what some of the arts organizations in the community are doing are they're getting together. Recently, here in Houston, the Latino artists founded a group called HALA, the Houston Association of Latino Arts. It rhymes with pull in Spanish, jalar, you know. And we're also going to have a 3-month celebration of Latino arts here in Houston called Latino Art Now. And we've already signed on about 33 institutions across the community to have exhibitions and events. And these 33 organizations, as of now, will launch 43 events in the community beginning in February 2019.
How exciting. Well, you'll definitely be getting attention from all of those, and hopefully funding will be forthcoming. Well, let's go to our audience, see if folks have some questions here. We have one in the back. And if you would just identify yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Ed Nowatka. I'm an editor at Publishers Weekly, which is a trade magazine about books. I'm curious, Houston strikes me as a city that's very misunderstood nationally. And in the way that your press, Arte Publico, has been instrumental in helping Latino and Hispanic culture tell its own story, what can be done for Houston to tell its story better to the nation? We have very little publishing in this city, and I'm curious how that could be fostered. Thank you.
Great question.
Well, actually, I'm trying to, currently working with various literary groups to bring the various sectors of the literary community together and develop workshops, such as summer workshops for writers in the area and as well as out of the area, to coalesce and begin creating other alternatives for publishing and for writing here in Houston, and possibly this will have some kind of impact on the national scene. But yeah, like in many areas of Houston, we have food deserts. We have a publishing desert here in Houston. We do not like to be the only and biggest operation in town as far as publishing is concerned. We would like a more broader community of writing and publishing. But we do have many, many writers, but the access to publishing is very diminished.
Okay. More questions? Here we go, right here in the front. See you ladies.
Hi, my name is Melissa Mayorga, and I just recently saw the Netflix show by John Leguizamo about the Latin cultures and how it is portrayed here in the United States, and the lack of Latino leadership and heroes that is demonstrated in our school system. How is it that, or how would you see it changing in the near future for our children to learn a little bit about, you know, where we came from and how many heroes actually paved the land, not just here in the United States, but throughout the world?
Thank you.
We have recently, I would say recently over the last 5 or 6 years, fought large battles in states, especially in the Southwest, to get our history into the schools. And we face a lot of barriers in doing that, but Arte Publico, Nuestra Palabra in our community, and various other organizations are fighting that. And we work on a daily basis to get all of this information that is relevant to the United States as part of American history and American culture, not a foreign history, not a foreign culture. We've always been here since before the Founding Fathers, and this history needs to be part of what forms the community and creates the community identity. What became the U.S. has always been diverse and always drawn from many different cultures. It's just that quite often the people who write the books, the textbooks, or get them published, forgot about us.
All right, we have time for actually maybe one more question. No? All right, one in the back there.
Hi, this is Margaret Adams. I wanted to ask you, since we have a dearth of publishing companies that focus on Latino stories, how can we as the community help support, get those stories out in alternative methods? Are we looking at alternative newspapers? Are we looking at like open mic nights and community conversations at colleges? What does that look like to you?
Really great question. What can we do?
I think all of the above, of course. There's more and more space for online publishing and for online discussion and chat rooms and blogs. And this quite often begins to create a community that eventually can move into the other media. And one of our authors who became the poet laureate of Houston, Gwendolyn Cepeda, started off as an online blogger with her literary comments and her stories and poems, etc. And eventually, not only did she publish with Arte Público, she published with publishing houses in New York that have national, international reach. So yeah, there are building blocks and things that we can do.
Right. Thank you all for your questions, and join me in thanking Nicolas Canelos. Thank you. Muchas gracias.